Hello and welcome to Ingenium Books weekly live Facebook and YouTube, whatever it is that we're doing, little broadcast discussion talk all about nonfiction independent publishing. I'm Boni Wagner-Stafford from Ingenium Books, and I am joined by John Wagner-Stafford. That's right.
Hi.
So we are I forget if we were in this physical space the last time we did this. I think so. No. We're in a new physical space than we were last time, and we're having some internet challenges. So we ask for your patience if there are any internet issues. We're working with providers to get that taken care of. Anyway, here's hoping that it will not be a problem.
Yeah.
You can always hope, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So today what we're going to talk about, we've got a couple of things on our agenda. One is to talk about publishing news. There's lots of things going on in the publishing industry that are of interest to both readers and consumers of books and authors who are publishing and preparing and or trying to sell their books in the marketing industry. So we're going to talk about a number of those things. And we're also going to talk about hybrid publishing, which we'll get into the details, but hybrid publishing is a relatively new entrant in the publishing business model array, if you like. So we'll talk about what that is and how you tell if somebody's a hybrid. And it'll, as we discuss this, I think it'll help authors and wannabe authors to determine whether a hybrid publishing arrangement might work for them. So, John, where do we start?
Well, why don't we start at the top with some news? And one of the most the biggest news events in the last number of months has been COVID-19. And COVID-19 has really affected the publishing industry in many ways, both negative and positive. And one of the ways that it has affected it, and we learned a little bit about this just this past week when we were putting together an order of books for one of our authors. But the time that it takes an author to order a book and get a book delivered to their home or to their office or to a bookstore has greatly increased in the last number of months, primarily because of COVID-19. And I'm just citing
authors.
No, authors, readers, the bookstores, everybody who's ordering books from wherever, whether it's electronically or from a printer, things are delayed. This is my point. And I'm just reading a bit of an article here from the Ingram Content Group, where they sent out a service alert to their clients and to the world, basically telling us that they have extended the estimated time for delivering their products. So in the US, the orders of paperback books are estimated to print in about 22 business days, whereas prior to that, it would take 3 to 5 business days. You order a book on Amazon. Amazon usually often uses Ingram to fulfill the printing needs and delivery needs of paperbacks, for instance. And so if you order a paperback from Amazon, they often use Ingram, and Ingram is now taking up to 22 business days to get that delivery done, whereas they would previously have taken 3 to 5 business days. And hardcover books are taking a couple of days longer, so they're taking around 24 business days to fulfill, if you will, the order of hardcovers. Amazon delivers ebooks. And that's going well because that's pretty simple. You log on to the internet, you've got your computer, you make an electronic purchase and you download an ebook. There's no delay there. But when you order a paperback, a hardcover, or a large printer or whatever, that's where the delays are taking place. And not only in the production of the books, but as we just discovered, in the shipping of the books as well. So the books have to go from Ingram's plant, for instance, or whoever the supplier is, Ingram's plant to the destination. That is also taking more time. So I guess what that means is that we need just a little more patience waiting for our books.
Right. Well, and it's one of the things that is driving an increase in ebook sales over paperbacks. And we know we have authors who have been waiting much longer than normal to receive their author copies, and we're hearing from readers that they're choosing not to place paperback orders because it's just taking so much time. So you're sitting at home, or have been sitting at home, and wanting to get more books to read. Who wants to wait another 6 weeks in some cases for that book that you've decided you want to read? Anyway, so the reason that this is news now is mainly because we're seeing no change. We're seeing no alerts. While we're hearing about economies opening up and businesses starting to open up, that hasn't trickled down to any notice about shorter turnaround times yet for the printing of paperbacks. So this delayed news came out in May. We're, July 1st. Happy Canada Day, by the way. That 2 months, and we're not seeing any shift yet. So patience, as you say, is the watchword.
And sorry, Bonnie. So where you were going was, despite the delays and despite COVID-19, it's interesting how book sales have been impacted and what's going on in the book sales world.
Right. So, the publishing industry and book sales in particular, there have been impacts from COVID, but it's interesting. We certainly, as a hybrid publisher, we have not seen our business slow down. We've had, if anything, an increase in submissions of authors wanting us to consider their manuscripts for publishing. So we're seeing, and we're hearing from our industry contacts like Marie Beswick with Arthur, who is, I think, watching. Hi, Marie. And Marie and I will be here in a couple of weeks with the top 10 issues for writers. I'm sure I got the title wrong, but we're hearing that our other colleagues who work in this industry are also extremely busy. So there's that aspect of it. But people are buying books still. So from Publishers Weekly, for example, and this report just came out 2 days ago. So as we've just been discussing, the pandemic has disrupted print book sales. However, print book sales are still up 1.4% over the same time period in 2019. So even with those printing delays, 1.4% higher sales this year over last year. And, even more significant is the weekend of June 20th, when 15 million, or 22.9% higher than the same week last year, total units for the year have now reached 295.7 million, which is up from the 291.6 million units in the first 24 weeks of 2019. So part of that is because of Father's Day. Part of that is the social justice issues. We've seen all the racism issues and protests. And so many of those social justice books are moving in ways that they wouldn't have and weren't a year ago, whether those are new releases or not. And then, anything to do with Father's Day, such as our author Yvonne Caputo's book, Flying with Dad, those have also seen some increases in sales and movements. Now, the other interesting piece of this, also from Publishers Weekly, is, and this is really not that surprising, but it's kind of interesting, the degree of interest is between March 1st and May 2nd, the hobbies and crafts category of books is up 16% over the same period last year. So, whether that's woodworking books, or, how to build a bird box, or, tie-dye for, whatever, those how-to books, things that you're doing at home, those have sales have really gone up. So interesting to note for authors who are thinking about publishing in those areas, whether a return to work or in the post-COVID world, whatever that looks like, and nobody really has any idea yet whether those things continue. Anybody will, and this is interesting, of course, because all of the books that we've talked about now, the social justice issues, the how-tos, those are all nonfiction, and that's the space that we play in, of course. So one other thing about the book sales and in the nonfiction category is, and this is a report from the hot sheet, even with those segments that have spiked, the overall US book market is still pretty flat. So there, the other categories of books aren't selling as well, and that's resulting in a fairly flat sales. But so we've got the how-to, the social justice, and this is what I find interesting, is the best business books have a long shelf life and continue to do very well as a subgenre of nonfiction. So a really good high-value business book can enjoy higher maintained sales over and above what we normally see from many of the other categories, which is a spike in and around launch to a fairly rapid de-escalation to a lower maintained level. Business books will go up and then they will stay higher, the business books that are good. So one more thing, which is the connection between the pandemic, which is kind of infusing everything that we're doing right now, and any kind of nonfiction, particularly business book. People who are in the process of writing or have written and are in the process of readying their book for publish now, the big question is, and we're dealing with this with a couple of our books that we've just published 4 in the last 6 weeks or so, and we've got a few more that will be coming out publishing in the next few months, but is how do we deal with the pandemic? You can't really ignore it because it has been so significant, but neither can you assume that addressing it head on in a particular way is going to be relevant when the book comes out in 6 months or 12 months. So that's a little bit of an issue. And as I say, we've got a book that will be out in the next few months, a memoir, where the author is, she can't not talk about the pandemic, but we keep going back and forth. Does she talk about it in the past tense? Does she talk about it in the current tense? And that's really, among the most basic things. Business books, any how-tos, leadership books around business. How does somebody write and prepare and publish that without addressing in some way the pandemic? So I don't have the answer to that, but I just think it's kind of interesting.
And within all of those different categories that have been shifting, where sales are up in certain categories and flat or down in others, the overall fact is that because of COVID, ebook sales, obviously, and it makes sense, are up quite a bit. Even within the flat market overall, print is down, ebook is up quite a bit within those different categories.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's one other little bit of news that I think we should just touch on briefly before we move on to talking about hybrid publishing. And I was going to say, we always encourage and welcome comments or questions from anybody. If you're looking at this live or whether you're watching it on the replay, welcome, obviously. And, let us know if you have any questions or issues. We'd be happy to address them. But the one other little piece of news is, Amazon is a big behemoth in the book industry, as it is, in any industry. Amazon is a search engine as well as a retail site, and 70% of all books sold are sold by Amazon. Wow. Online rather. So 70% of all online books are sold via Amazon. So, and everybody knows that. What's the first thing most people do when you think, oh, I'm going to go look for a book? Where do you either go direct to Amazon, or you type a search term in, Google or whatever, but many people go direct to Amazon because if it isn't on Amazon, it isn't there.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thinking, which isn't necessarily true. Anyway, the EU, the European Union, is making moves or preparing to make moves against Amazon. And again, this is a report from Jane Friedman's The Hot Sheet. But the EU has been investigating Amazon's anti-competitive practices and is on the verge of filing formal antitrust charges over the use of its data from third-party marketplace sellers. So the Wall Street Journal has a full story on this, but if Amazon is found in violation, the EU can force Amazon to change business practices. So that's kind of an interesting development to watch. California and Washington State are also moving ahead with investigations. Whether those investigations will turn into anything is another matter. All right.
Boni, just a quick question. You might not have the answer, but what is the impact on me as an author, me as a reader, to Amazon's mistreatment of third-party information?
I have no idea. I have no idea. I do know from dealing with Amazon, both from our history of working with self-published authors and our own interactions with Amazon, that it is a behemoth and it behaves like a behemoth and it doesn't particularly care.
Respect.
It doesn't feel like that, whether they actually do care or not. I mean, obviously they care about their business, but there are lots of things that Amazon does that it doesn't explain, that it doesn't justify. It changes rules, it changes algorithms, all of those kinds of things, which in many ways are, it's right because it's a business and it gets to determine how it operates. But I guess these are questions, and in the world of the questions raised about appropriate use of data, third-party data, Facebook, Cambridge Analytica, these are all issues that we need to be cognizant of, we need to be aware of, and I think this is really at the heart of and again, I haven't read the whole Wall Street Journal rather, report, so I could be totally misinterpreting this. But I think that's really at the heart of what this challenge is the technical capacity is there to abuse the information and the data, and we need to have checks and balances into how this plays out, and we need to be able to set boundaries on what's appropriate. So,
cool. Yeah. So sorry for throwing that at you, but
no, that's good.
Yeah, and so maybe next what we can do is move on to the big question, and what we really wanted to focus a little bit on today is what is hybrid publishing? What is a hybrid publisher? What are the differences? We're a hybrid publisher, and we're a member of the IBPA, and the IBPA has a great definition of what a hybrid publisher is, can be, and maybe should be. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, and so I'm curious whether anyone watching us now or on live or on the replay understands what a hybrid publisher is or has any questions about it. So consider posting your question while we blather on about it. But so hybrid publishing, as I mentioned off the top, is a relatively new entrant in the suite of publishing business models. And so, years ago, you had your traditional publishing model, curated, selective, publisher has, really the lion's share of all the control, takes the lion's share of royalties, no or little creative decision making on behalf of the author. And then 2008 really was the beginning of the explosion of self-publishing, full control on behalf of the authors doing everything themselves. 100% of their royalties comes to the author, steep learning curve, proliferation of, I would say, standard material, giving self-publishing a bad name. And so in the trajectory there, traditional and self, comes the hybrid publishing model, which is a partnership model between authors and publishers. And this is an author-funded model, and as such, it's important to understand what the industry standards are and where, how to arm yourself, as an author. If you're looking into your publishing options for a book, you want to understand what those industry standards are to make sure that you're not falling into a trap of, of working with someone who's going to take advantage of you. And, you probably heard the term vanity press, which is author-funded models by companies who will publish anybody and anything. All they want is to take your money. Doesn't really matter whether the book has potential or is any good or will sell. And for some authors that is just fine. But we kind of would say, beware. So hybrid publisher. And again, you mentioned IBPA, which is the Independent Book Publishers Association. Ingenium Books is a member, and the IBPA came out with their hybrid publisher criteria in 2018, which is really, really helpful. So we'll go through, we've actually only got about 10 minutes left in our planned 30, and we can go over that if we want to. But essentially, hybrid publishing companies behave very much like traditional publishers, with the exception of the fact that they're an author-subsidized business model. So traditional publishing, solicited, quality control, no author upfront investment, and the publisher retains somewhere between 85 and 95% of the post-sales royalty. So, and they may or may not pay an advance on those royalties to the author. Now, important notion that many authors, they just want the advance. I want my advance. That's why I want a traditional publishing deal, because I want that advance.
But it's an advance.
Exactly. It's an advance against future sales. So many authors get that advance and never see another penny because there's not the sales to support it. So that's one thing to know. Hybrid publisher, same thing, quality control, traditional publishing standards, author funded off the top. Author gets a much higher percentage of the post-sale royalties. And according to the IBPA, their standards are, must be 50% of net royalties from sales. And ours, for example, is 60. So the list of the 9 things, do you want to run through the list of the 9 things, John, or how did you want to go?
Yeah, and maybe we just because we're short on time, maybe we focus on the issues that are actually really, really important to our listener. And one of the things that comes to mind right off the top is the quality, and how the hybrid publisher will help the author with the quality, not only of the content, but of the product itself. And I think that's one of the most important things that the hybrid publisher brings to the table.
Yeah, so there's 2 things there, of the 9 elements, and we've got a link on our website to and we summarize it on our website, so people can visit ingeniumbooks.com and if they're interested in this. But there's 2 of the 9 elements that deal with the quality that you're talking about. One is the vetting of submissions, which I've mentioned a couple of times, but it means that a hybrid publisher will publish only those titles that meet the mission and vision of the company, as well as a defined quality level set by the publisher. So good hybrid publishers don't publish everything that comes in, and they often decline to publish. And we know that because we don't accept everything that comes our way, and we have and do decline projects. But so meeting the mission and vision of the company, ours, for example, we want to breathe life into ideas. We focus on nonfiction, producing, publishing, creating, and publishing outstanding nonfiction. So, that's the emphasis on the outstanding nonfiction. We look for stories that have the potential to really impact a reader's life, make their life better in any, various ways, shapes, or forms. So we do business, we do journalistic nonfiction, we do memoir and self-help. And so even our memoir categories, it's, is the story, is it a unique take on life events? Are they extraordinary life events? Is the writing extraordinary about events that everybody or many people experience? So those are some of the things that we look for when we vet the submissions that come in for memoir, for example. And then the second element that you were talking about is the quality, the production quality. And there are two components of the hybrid publisher criteria from IBPA that talk about this. One is publishing to industry standards. So if you see a book and you open up the book and there's no copyright page, there's no front matter, you see a bunch of spelling mistakes, or the formatting that's not a hybrid published or a traditionally published book. That is probably a self-published book or a vanity published book that simply hasn't had the professional industry standards applied. So that's something that's important. So a hybrid publisher will also, speaking to quality, ensure editorial design and production quality. So that speaks to that. So we like to think, and we look for manuscripts that are ready to publish. We've never seen one, actually. It doesn't mean that they aren't there, but most of the manuscripts that we receive via submission still require some editorial work. And we will provide the feedback to the author as to what is still required. And hybrid publishers, us included, can offer those author services over and above their publishing offer. But an author really should have the choice about how they make those improvements, editorial improvements to their manuscript. So that's something to watch for. And then obviously design and production quality. Homemade, or I'm going to say template covers, but there are some template covers that are pretty good if they're done by a designer with experience in the book industry. And then production quality, so well formatted, produced in a ways that they stack up and are indistinguishable from any other traditionally / professionally published book. So those are the key things related to quality. What else should we touch on here before we?
Yeah, so the other main thing that I thought we wanted to just make sure it was well understood, and it's kind of at the end of their number 9s. And before I mention number 9, and I know we have very little time left, but a hybrid publisher, as a traditional publisher, knows what formats need to be printed and can be printed, and it would benefit the author of that story. They also know how to get that book out to the world, whether it's through Amazon or into the bookstores. They know how to do that, and they help the authors do that, minimizing that learning curve. And they also have history of sales in marketing and selling the books. They've got a history of performance, whether it's at level A, B, or C, but they have a history and a knowledge about how to sell these books. And then at the end of the list, which I think is important to remind our audience, is the royalty share, where the traditional publisher would keep 85 to 95% or so of the royalties for themselves, meaning that the author only gets 10, 15, 5, 10, 15%. It's turned around in the hybrid scenario.
Exactly. So much larger percentage of royalties on sales, more than 50%. So yes, all of that. So lots more information on our website, ingeniumbooks.com. Where you can find both a summary of and a link to the hybrid publisher criteria. I should just HTTPS ingeniumbooks.com for anybody that wants to go and check that out. And I guess that's it from this Canada Day 2020. Hope everybody stays safe and wears your mask. And I know that's a political hot potato in the US, but we'll be back next week. And in 2 weeks, I'm here with Marie. We're going to have fun. Top 10. I forget what the title is. Sorry, Marie, but top 10 issues or top 7 issues facing writers. So we're going to have some fun digging into that.
Excellent.
Yeah. All right. Thanks very much. Thanks, John.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Boni.